Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's a bright and cheery Monday morning, the week of Christmas they call it. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, I would say it's a motivation Monday, and nothing in my opinion would motivate more than the story of Naomi Orakpo. Let's take a look.
Then they do call my name. And everybody starts to shout. And I'm like, God, thank you. I'm walking to the stage and I'm like, yes, you've achieved that which you wanted to.
This is the story of 20-year-old Naomi Orakpo, who graduated overall best student in her department with a cumulative grade point average of 4.96. Naomi, born to the family of Pastor Cyprian and Pastor Mrs. Doreen Orakpo, is the third child of 4 siblings. She says she has always had eyes for excellence. As such, she learned to set goals from an early age.
I woke up to my parents and I'm like, Mom, Dad, I would like to join music club. I also want to play the violin. And they're like, you want to play the violin? I'm like, yes, I can do it. And they're like, okay, we'll get you a violin if you come first in your class. And I'm like, okay, if I come first, I get the violin, I get to stay after school. So that was my goal. And then I worked towards it, I read, and then I came first and I got the violin.
Goal setting, combined with a reward system set up by her parents, paid off for her. And she made remarkable progress over time, scoring excellent grades even in her secondary school.
In secondary school, throughout my stay, I maintained first position in my class, and I graduated with best in commercial studies and best student with outstanding record, overall best student.
If I knew what I know now in training my other children to discover what are their drivers, okay, and then use those drivers to motivate them, maybe they probably would have gotten outstanding performance like her.
When it was time to begin her university education, Naomi had another goal in mind.
Entering into university, I did commerce in secondary school. So I loved business and I loved accounting, but you have to pick one going into university. And I didn't want to pick one because I wanted to know both. But then in Nigeria, we don't offer 2, you can't take 2 degrees at the same time like they do abroad. So, okay, how do I achieve this? So I was like, okay, let me get my degree in business administration while I do a professional course outside school for accounting, AAT and ICANN.
It, however, didn't come easy, merging both disciplines, but it was a price she had to pay.
You know, sometimes I pity her. I feel like asking the lecturers who I have paid, you know, so it's okay, go, let her rest. Because at times she's like, can I have 30 minutes? And they give her 30 minutes. That 30 minutes, she's sleeping. You go to another corner of the house, and she's just sleeping. And you can see that this person is tired. And they're letting her know that there's 4 more hours for some serious accounting training.
Naomi shares a strategy she adopted, which helped her balance her academics and social life.
I ask questions a lot because I want to leave that classroom with enough understanding. After all, I paid to get that understanding. Instead of just when lecturer talks, you're just nodding, you don't understand anything, and then you go back to your hostel, and then I have to read from point 0 again. So I always tried to understand the most I could, so that when I do get to my hostel, I'm building on that knowledge. I'm not starting from point 0.
It wasn't just a function of she would ask the most minute questions. She also wasn't afraid to think that she was pulling you back to something you really should have moved on from. So even though you had forgotten about it, you just see the hand coming up and she would say, oh, something you mentioned a few minutes ago, she wasn't quite clear about. So I like the fact that not only did she not think anything was too silly, she also was bold enough to stop you at whatever time.
While she looked forward to obtaining a first class in her field of study, she also wanted to come tops in her department. However, a few days to her exams, the unexpected happened. She contracted COVID. This meant she could not do the final exams with the rest of the students.
When you're alone, the only person to turn to is God. I kept praying and asking him for help because he's more of my friend. Yes. So next 2 days, I tested again and I was negative and I started coming back to school.
While she has a whole lot ahead of her to conquer, she believes the girl child can achieve whatever she aspires to.
There's this archaic mentality that girls can't do it, girls can't succeed, girls can't be in charge. And I hear it a lot of misogynistic point of views from some guys, and I'm like, nah, I want to break that. There's a paradigm shift that I want to be a part of. And that's why when I look at my mom, I get so motivated because she's breaking the barrier. I want to also do that.
Hers is a story of a young girl who learned to set goals early in life and brave enough to put in the work. No doubt fortune awaits. Chris Elems, Channels Television News.
Goal setting, parental influence, and God. Who says anything is impossible? So no matter what the challenges are, guess what? Naomi Arakpo is only 20. And she didn't achieve whatever it is that she achieved without its challenges, including the ones that she meets in the course of getting things done. No matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, you have your own responsibilities right ahead of you. And I think this story only tells us one thing. Irrespective of whatever it is, as the new year approaches, parents have a lot of work to do to make sure our children turn out to be exactly the way God intended them to be. After all, the last line in Nigeria's pledge is, "So help me God." So help us God this morning as we take you through the program, beginning with the New Telegraph. And it is talking about terrorism, war against terrorism and banditry. That's the first story. And Turkey's drones ordnance game changer, that's ascribed to presidency. And you have gunmen kill 38 in fresh Kaduna attack. FG to go after alleged sponsors of violence in the north. Visit troubled areas. PDP tells Buhari. Nigeria in war situation, that's ascribed to IU. You want to find out what the details of all of that is on the inside pages. Pages 2, 3, and 4 of New Telegraph has that story. And right under that picture, you see on the front page of the Vice President and the Amayanabo and paramount ruler of Abomina Kingdom. Find the details on the inside pages. APC convention. Caretaker committee meets to decide on date. Postponement will spell doom for the party. Ebri and others say. Find the details on page 3. Now, those who have been wondering what happened to that currency swap deal between Nigeria and China. Above the nameplate, currency swap, CBN sells 3.69 billion yuan in 3 years. And what does that mean and how has that impacted Nigeria? Find the details on the front page, continues on page 3 of New Telegraph this morning. That's the New Telegraph today. Good morning, Markwe.
Good morning, Ayo. I'm sure you had great fun watching Naomi's story. Very inspirational, too. Well, let's take a look at what a few of the other papers are saying. The Guardian has this one on its front page. Yuletide demand spikes airfares by 200% amid haze disruptions delays. Yes, it's that time of the year again when the tickets price go up and you're not sure if you're flying because the Hamilton haze will not let the pilot see. So, wow, what a jeopardy there. Economy tickets sell at 100,000 naira average. Oh yes, you heard right. Tickets in economy seats or economy class are selling for an average of 100,000 naira. Consumer satisfaction tumbles as travelers suffer without protection. Whether the CPC, Consumer Protection Council, we have to ask, well, I guess they might need to find ways to see how they can take the complaints of customers at this time. NCAA alerts pilots, crew to poor visibility, safety precautions. We have low capacity to meet demand surge, operators confess. So a lot more people want to travel by air, but very few operators or very few capacity or very little capacity to be able to meet demand. Well, you know that when demand is high and supply is little, the prices certainly go up. So just obeying simple laws of economics here. Page 2 will give you all the read, just in case you're still planning to travel, what you need to know. A number of other stories. Electoral bill, governors, NAS in last supremacy battle. It's on page 2 of the paper. Don't forget that there have been talks about how long the president has still to sign the electoral bill. We've been told not to preempt the presidency, or the president rather. That's what the spokesperson of the president has said. But we'll wait to see what eventually transpires. A number of other stories just beneath the nameplate. Southern Middle Belt leaders demand suspension of 2023 general elections. You might want to know why. And NUJ-NGE warned politicians against destructive politics ahead of 2023. Yeah, that's the Nigerian Union of Journalists and Nigeria Guild of Editors warn politicians against destructive politics ahead of 2023. Well, let us hope that we as journalists too also play our part by ensuring that stories that we carry are true and that we help to set the agenda on what is truly important to the people. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
Perhaps one critical question to ask, Malpa, would be, why do we always have that tension build up before elections? It's the same thing on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Tension persists over electoral bill. The story you find on pages 23 and 24. Civil society groups to storm National Assembly. Senators indict governors. Ubani, senators, others warn on consequences of Buhari not signing bill. Northern Coalition tasks National Assembly on action. The details are on the inside pages. Right under that picture on the front page, Nigeria's tech startups raise over $1.7 billion in 2021. That's according to a report. Find that story on page 6 of the paper this morning. U.S. pledges continuous support to spur Nigeria's tech to global markets. The details you'll find on the inside pages and several other stories making the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. The back page has sports. Barca have lost club's model of play as ascribed to Xavi, and a number of other stories on the back page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Take a look at Daily Trust, and they have this for you. Electoral bill. Buhari snubs National Assembly, declines assent. That's what they find, or that's what they have on the front page. President succumbed to pressure from governors. Malami, so it wasn't just the governors, but also his Attorney General as well, will take action this week. That's from the senators. Override him, CSs urged lawmakers. It's the Daily Trust we're reviewing, just in case you can see, or I'm hoping that you can see it. NAS vetoed president once since 1999. So perhaps they're looking at what the chances of that will be this time around. That's NAS vetoing the president. It's only happened once in the Fourth Republic. So who knows? Will this be the second time? We don't know. Page 5 might give you a hint. And then you have a number of other stories here. Airfares may rise as new aviation handling rates begin January 1. That's also on the front page there. Bandits kill 38 villagers in Kaduna. Very sad story. As Boko Haram kills 10, abduct dozens in Borno. Communal clash claims 7 in Taraba. You have a few disturbing stories on the corner. Take a look at this. Ogun couple sells 1-month-old baby for 50,000 naira. You have to ask, you know, what could have caused this? What could have influenced this? A 1-month-old baby, and all that baby is worth to you is 50,000 naira. You might want to read page 23 for details. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Sad as it is, it's also on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, page 26. I don't know. Now, Vanguard newspaper is next, and it is concerned about insecurity. General Magaro to Buhari: you can end insecurity within 6 months. Find the details of that on page 5. Says Buhari should act like when he was GOC. Notes strategic military alliance with China, Russia, others necessary. Nigeria in war situation, PDP declares. Find the details on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. I won't stop speaking against injustice, bad governance. That's on page 14 and ascribed to Bishop Kuka. Under that picture of competition by banks, fintechs drive consumer loans up 43% to 1.8 trillion naira. 58 killed by bandits, Boko Haram in Kaduna, Borno. Find the details on page 7. Very sad story indeed. There's a question on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Electoral Act bill. Will National Assembly override Buhari? Question is probably answered on page 31 of the paper this morning, and several others right there. The sports on the back page has CAF Confederations Cup, Etihad claim Iyiba's ouster, and several others that you will find quite interesting. Quick one, Mr. and Mrs. It's a shouting match, Mr. and Mrs. this morning. Mr. is raising his voice. Prices of things have gone up. Is that why you want extra money? Things are not as hard as you're painting it. And Mrs. response: if things are not as hard, why are you shouting like this? That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Well, let's take a look at what the Abuja Inquirer has for you. They are already in the Christmas mood, and they have, yeah, you can see it's season's greetings. They have the season's greetings just right on top of their nameplate there. But the story, the story is in great contrast with the greeting. Outrage, oh yes, that's the word, the lead word there. Outrage as FCTA destroys 375 million naira worth of bikes. Insensitive, no economic sense. That's from residents. You might want to see details on page 3 of the paper. And this story, which has made the rounds now, quite disturbing. I hope that the military authorities will let's take a second look at the story. Marriage proposal, female soldier to spend Christmas in detention. And yes, I don't know if you've heard the story about a youth corps member who proposed to a female soldier. She agreed to his proposal, and right now she's serving time in detention because the army says she broke the rules. I sincerely hope that their love at least will be able to overcome this one, but I don't think that, you know, people should be punished for love. Perhaps a second look should be taken at this, because this is supposed to be something honest and, you know, it's a marriage proposal. It's not like I said they were dating on the corner or something, you know. Page 3 will give details. I sincerely hope that, you know, in the spirit of the season, which is the season of love, that the army would, temper justice with mercy and take a second look at the rules and take a second look at the situation, and perhaps do the needful in this instance. But page 3 will give you details. Marriage proposal, female soldier to spend Christmas in detention. There have been questions about how this could also be interpreted as being sexist, because if it was the other way around, if it was a male soldier proposing, would it attract this much punishment? I don't know. Page 3 will give you details. FCTA raises alarm over redirection of electricity power lines. Illegal buildings reappear in Gwarimpa Mpape months after demolition. Plagiarism. TET Fund moves to digitize varsity thesis. And insecurity. Beyond protests, federal government must end killings. That's from Nigerians. So let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Incidentally, as you said about that proposal, the military may need to make a little more noise because you pointed to the rules. For now, that is the excuse that, okay, maybe some rules were broken one way or the other, but then maybe a second look, as you have said, needs to be paid to that one. Look at Daily Independent this morning, and it's talking about experts warning FG against increasing taxes and tariffs in 2022. The details you'll find right there on the front page, continues on the inside pages. A couple writers say it will hurt businesses, increase unemployment, ask FG to widen tax net to capture untaxed endeavors. What does that mean, really? The details you'll find on the inside pages. Right under that picture, new threshold rates. Ground handling companies sign pact, spell out sanction for violators. The details continues on the inside pages. NCAA approves 25% discounted rates on new charges. All of that is unpacked on the front page. And above the nameplate, we're in a war situation in Nigeria. IU PDP chairman says, and also says unity, existence of Nigeria threatened under Buhari. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the Daily Independent this morning.
And leadership has this one. Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Political parties oppose NAS overriding PMB, say it's bad for his legacy. NAS won't shift support for PMB, Senate President declares. We won't interfere, that's from the PDP. APC keeps mum, that's also on the front page this morning. A number of other stories at the bottom. Bandits kill 38 in Kaduna communities. General Sura calls for special court to try terrorists. It's a page 8 read. Assault. How Minister Envoy saved Nigerian passengers in Togo. Okay, page 6 will give you details of what that story is about. Fear of low profits pushes banks to adopt holding company structure. 6 banks in, more to follow. Yes, a number of banks are becoming holding companies where their banks are just one of the arms of the businesses that they own and run. So you might want to see details on page 8 as to how many more banks are following and which are the banks. We'll leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Nigerian News Direct this morning turns our attention on that salient issue of the Omicron variant. Nigeria records 828 new cases. The story is on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Question you want to ask is the Omicron variant responsible for the 828 new cases, or it's just a coalition? Find the details on the inside pages. UK government monitors data, begins visa processing for Nigerians. Rivers records highest figure. Find out why. SFG warns students to take responsibility for their health. Right under that picture, Kaduna massacre. Buhari condemns killings, orders security forces to destroy terrorists. Kaduna massacre. Buhari condemns killings, orders security forces to destroy terrorists. Find the details of that on the inside pages of the paper this morning and several others. Okay, this one. Revenue generation. Abuja-Kaduna rail line generates 300 million naira monthly. That's ascribed to Mechi. You want to catch the full interview on hard copy on channelstelevision.com. Well, more of that on the inside pages, but then right after this break, it's time for us to take on the issues for the day. Just stay with us.
Parliament resumes plenary for the week and delves straight into what is perhaps the most talked about issue since this 9th Assembly, security.
In Imo State, particularly,
Senator Rochas Okorocha draws the attention of the Senate to what he describes as worsening security situation in Imo State. He adds that this level of killings has not been recorded in the history of the state.
There's no day that passes in the state without one ugly story of kidnapping, killing, maiming, burning of innocent homes, shops on daily basis. Mr. Senate President, 2 weeks ago, it was the killing of traditional rulers. The other day, it was killing of a policeman, and a few days ago, it was killing of an army man.
This Senate, and indeed the entire National Assembly, has been very consistent in trying to find some kind of solution, more permanent solution to ending the security situation in the country. And of course, we'll continue to do so, and agree that we need to diversify our means of getting the solution to the numerous myriads of security challenges across the country.
I so second.
In the House of Representatives, an urgent motion on the need to look into cases of unresolved kidnap is considered, using the Southeast as reference.
The House notes that there have been a lot of cases of missing persons in the Southeast and in Anambra State in particular. The House further notes that among other crimes recorded during the said period was the kidnap of one Mr. Obiora Abasimelo, the candidate of Labour Party for the just concluded Anambra governorship election. He was kidnapped on the 18th of September 2021 in Anambra State.
The House resolves to urge the security agencies to quickly get to the root of the unresolved cases across the country and mandate its relevant committees to work with the security agencies and report back in 6 weeks. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
As it is, security takes the front burner again, and the issues just don't seem to be going away. How do we take on these violent crimes happening all over the place? Well, it is heartwarming to know that, we get reports from time to time that security officials are doing one thing or the other to ensure that they get ahead of the information. In Taraba State, we understand that security officials intercepted some insurgents and got some equipment from them. That's very heartwarming. A product of intelligence, gathering, use, and all of that. But then to hear that there were killings in Kaduna again, I don't know. But let's look at these issues with Adenrele Shinaba, who is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police here in Lagos studio. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
He is in company of security consultant Onyekachi Adekoya, also here with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Shinaba. First of all, I was asking you, how are you taking on all these divergent information about insecurity and the way we are tackling them?
It's very saddening to start hearing all these informations about insecurity generally in the country. More so if you were once an active member of the force that took part in the fight against insecurity generally. It's not pleasing to hear. And one looks at it that what are we doing about it? What is it that the country is doing about the level of insecurity we have today? Every day there are killings in this country. They reported this morning again 38 people that were killed in a village in Kaduna State. And it has been like a recurring decimal. The next you will hear is another place. So it's not restricted to any particular area of the country. It's in general something.
Well, you served in the force. Before I could take Mr. Adekoya's opening comments, you served in the force for 33 years.
Yes.
You only recently retired about, say, 5 years ago?
Exactly.
What was your experience? The insurgency in particular, we understood, really came to a head in 2009, but it wasn't the only time we began to have all these kinds of issues, the kidnappings of children in 2014 and all that. You were in office. What are the things that you would say were our shortfalls that perhaps even made us more vulnerable till now?
I agree with you that insurgency had been on, but came to a head in 2009. And I wrote a book, The Nigeria Police Force and the Management of Insurgency in Nigeria, a study of Borno and Kano states. You see, it came to a head with the killing of Mohammed Yusuf, the leader in Maiduguri, by the police. And ever since then, the Northeast had not known peace as a result of the activities of Boko Haram. And the problem now is that there are splinter groups of these Boko Haram insurgents. You have the ISWAP, you have these different, they come in forms, different forms and shapes. And the government, I think, there is the need for the government to do more than they are presently doing. For instance, there are retired officers, both in the military and in the police, who have been stakeholders in this fight against terrorism. There is the need to bring these retired officers together and let them form a kind of think tank for the serving members so that they can sit down, put their thoughts together, and come up with a solution to this. I can assure you, if you keep on recruiting people, able-bodied men and women into the force, that's not the solution. It's not about the personnel, the number of people you have, but the equipment that are needed to carry out this assignment.
Okay. Let me take Mr. Adekoya's opening comments. Well, from all that is available, it would seem like we are winning some and losing some. Would you say that's an accurate summation or something we're missing still?
I would say that's a perfect assessment of the situation. And it's a product of the way we are set up. I would be surprised if anybody's expecting a different result because it would seem that our approach to security in this country is quite static. And we are caught up in the assumptions of the past. And those assumptions no longer hold sway. The Nigerian security system is facing a Hydra-headed challenge. And we are having waves, emphasis, waves of attacks. Waves upon waves upon waves of attack. The static system cannot cope. The system is failing. Interventionist knee-jerk reactions are not the way to go in the 21st century.
Apologies, Mr.
Yes.
Static approach. What do you mean?
It's just old assumptions. I'll give you an example. For example, in Anambra, sometime in 1999 to 2007, you had this guy called Derrick Owamama terrorizing Anambra State. We've had cases where you had Shinorambos, you had the Aninis. We had cases in Nigeria where crime was personified in singular persons. So you could confront with brute force that single ideology or that person, and which is what led to the killing of Yusuf, because the approach has always been attack head on the tip of the spear, and then hoping that the back end of the insurgency will crumble. That assumption can no longer hold, because now you have bandits. They are faceless. They are without any clear ideology. They are armed criminal groups, as far as we are concerned. At the back of their ideology is just economic interest. So when you face a faceless enemy, you have to be dynamic, quite flexible, and you must push command to the field. Push command to the field and let the approach be local, as dynamic as the enemy you are facing. Importantly, we have only one police force in Nigeria, policing over 200 to 220 million people. For example, the United States has approximately 18,000 agencies responsible for security in one country with about 50 to 51 states. With a population of what? About 350 million. Just take off 150 million, you get the average population of Nigeria. California alone has almost 70,000 policemen. So yes, I agree that, it's not about the total numbers. For me, it's about the structure. Having to rely so much on a federalistic approach can no longer satisfy the yearnings and imperatives of security in the 21st century. We must have state police, at least to give the military some respite and give the federal police some respite. The chief of defense staff is having to bury men every day. No jokes. The IGP is having to confront the same issues. The forces everywhere are overstretched, and they're overwhelmed, and there is no respite in sight for the fighting men.
But can we make an allusion, Mr. Ikoya, to the fact that, just as you said, we have quite a number of security agencies in the country, at least 12 or 13. Customs is one of them, immigration is one of them, road safety is one of them, NSCDC is one of them, NIA is there, and all of those things. Would you say that we have effectively put to use all of these agencies? Are they all doing what is expected to them, kitted enough to do what is expected of them in the first place? The influx of small arms is coming from the borders that are manned by certain specific security agencies, for instance.
Now, brings me to another very serious point. The issue again is about structuring. Yes, you have the NIA, the DMI, you have the DSS, you have all these agencies, immigration, customs. Those agencies are all a product of the society. And generally in Nigeria, we seem to abhor systemic thinking. We like to act in silos and nobody looking at the bigger picture. And that's the problem. We're not looking at the bigger picture. Yeah, so if you set up the intelligence agencies and you group them and they're supposed to give you intelligence, yes, what do you then do with the intelligence? When you have actionable intelligence, what is the structure you have on ground to address the issues that are being thrown up by the intelligence? So it's not a question of intelligence. And I dare say the DSS has personnel in every local government in this country. Intelligence is not the issue. No, sir, it is not. We have intelligence, I can tell you firsthand. In fact, you don't need to be a security officer or intelligence person to have intelligence. There's open source intelligence. The Punch newspaper put out reports. The Daily Trust puts out situational reports every day on the Northeast. Just go there. There's information of how things are trending, and sometimes you get alerts on what is about. The locals themselves, it's funny, in some part of the North, the locals know when something is about to happen. And they clear the place, and then they leave the security agencies flying blind. So there is intelligence. We don't have the correct structure. We need state police. It's as simple as that. We can come and have conjectures and have different theories. Why do we need state police? We need to localize the approach to security. The ownership, the responsibility, the accountability for policing and ensuring security in a state has to rest true and true in the governor of the state. When you have that, you then have the federal forces as a support force to the state while they focus on the issue of maintaining the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Currently, the whole northwest to northeast is awash. The lines of the borders between Niger, Chad, Cameroon are blood. And so that's why you see states on the fringes of the borders with Niger. States like Sokoto, you can hear the Sultan of Sokoto, lamenting. States like Borno just go up the whole from the two ends of the northwest to the northeast. States that border the Sahel. It's almost as though we are borderless. So how much can the Immigration Service do? If you had a state police, for example, addressing local issues, federal might can focus more correctly on those issues of territorial integrity while providing interventionist force to support the state forces. Until we do this, we will continue to suffer our lack of preparedness from these waves. The waves will only increase. Okay. Mind you, on the eve of every election cycle, we're going into 2022, we've seen statistically that crime rates will spike. And if you think you've seen incidents of crime, we've not seen anything yet. As we get into 2022, man is a creature of habit. Habitually, crime rates will spike because political actors will now join the fray. Case in point, look at Kano. Kano has been very peaceful for some time. Now, incidents of political unrest is almost picking up in Kano, and those will lead to some form of violence if not watched. So the stage is being set for 2022-2023 elections, and we are not prepared. So I think the problem is quite bigger than old ideologies, old assumptions, coming here to sermonize or theorize on what should be, what should not be. We are not structured correctly in this 21st century to address the issues of insecurity. And sadly, the people are paying the ultimate price. They are paying with their lives. Every day you turn the pages of the paper, people are dying every day. Life has almost lost any sense of value in this country.
Okay. Well, Mr. Medical, some of the issues that you have raised are calling for the attention of Mr. Shinaba. How do you take those things that he said?
Well, I want to disagree with Mr. Adekoya on the point of state police for this country. The issue of state police cannot work in this country. And why? We have experimented it in the past.
When?
That was during the First Republic. We had a kind of, we call them local government police in the north, in the south, everywhere here. But, you know, from what he is saying, state police will be in the hands of the governor of the state. And the dangers are there. The governor, especially in the democratic dispensation we have, will use the state police to his own advantage and to the detriment of his opponents and the community in general.
But how does that differ from what we have now?
Well, it's different because they will say the governor is the #1 security officer of the state.
Yeah.
And the state go ahead to say that the commissioner of police in charge of the state does not take directives from the governor. Rather, he takes directives from the Inspector General of Police in Abuja.
But there are those who also say that this argument is the same reason that whoever is the president will always use the police to his own advantage.
Well, if they say the president will use, I don't know how he's going to do that.
So how then will it happen in the state level?
Of course, it happens in the state. In the state. Okay, look at what we are experiencing today. The governor of the state will be the one to give policemen vehicles, give them equipment and things like that. Recently, the Edo State governor donated 60 patrol vans to the police in Edo State Command. That's what we are saying.
But the states have been doing that for as far back as I can remember.
Yes.
You know that Lagos State, for instance, has a security council. And there are a number of states like that who have continued on a regular basis to support the police with infrastructure, with operational equipment and facilities and all of that, because, as you said, they are the chief security officers of their states.
Yes.
So if they already do that, what is wrong with them also being able to command the troops that they support in order to ensure the security of lives and property within their domain?
It will be subject to abuse. It will be subject to abuse when you leave the state, when you leave the police in the hands of the governor. Look, most of these problems we are having now, or we are talking about insecurity and all this, is a product of the politicians. It's a byproduct of the politicians.
But don't we have politicians at the federal level?
Of course we have, both at the federal, state, and local government levels. We have them. But I believe that rather than have state police, we should delve more on community policing.
How effective? Anyway, let me start. Adekoya, quickly respond to that before we go to Abuja. Mr. Adekoya.
Yeah, thank you very much. And with very profound respect, I do disagree with the AIG retired. I have a lot of industry colleagues who are retired generals and retired very senior officers in the services. And generally, I sense from interactions with them that you can't teach old people new tricks, particularly once they are set in their way. And I say this with very profound respect. The beauty of democracy is that the people determines how they want to be governed, not ideologies from very few set of people. And it's completely wrong, I would dare say, with also respect, that to say that the governor of a state cannot be trusted with force. Absolutely, we should just go back to monarchical system or forget about democracy all completely, because democracy in itself has its own checks and balance.
But those concerns are genuine.
Sorry, they are not. How is it different? We've had a sitting president remove a sitting governor from this country. We've had policemen removed from the aids of a governor in this country. We've had places of place of residence of justices of the Supreme Court ransacked by federal forces, and then we claim they are unknown people. How is it different? We are saying that the country is drifting. We are holding on to assumptions that are no longer tenable. We can't say that as a state, for example, Lagos State with over 22 million people, we cannot trust the governor with the use of force. Is that what we're saying? Or that we are so much holed up in the ideology of regime protection, and that the life of one man, the CEC, is all that counts, and 220 million people can go and die for all anybody cares? Is that what we are saying? Because I'm sick and tired of this ideology perpetuating itself. And with due respect, I'd almost say to my friends who are in the services that you're a general doesn't mean that you're a subject matter expert on security. You could be a general in finance or administration. It doesn't mean you're an expert. So I do
Mr.
say that
some people will say, I mean, because you've cited the fact that, you know, as it currently stands, the police has already been abused. They've already been excesses, you know, as it currently stands. I guess what a lot of people are afraid of is the proliferation of that sort of excess. Do you share their fears?
No, not at all, not at all, not at all. When we say the proliferation, would you rather have the proliferation of insecurity as we currently have now, the proliferation of small and light weapons as we currently have now, or you have the multiplication of force across the states? Which would we rather have? We are drifting. When we talk about security, we talk about accountability. The IG, as one man, impossible. The IG's office is a market, if you've ever been there, with due respect to the IG. And yes, the AIG has said, correct, politicians are the problem. The man doesn't have time to do the work of a police. The DIG operation does more of the operations of the police. Because politicians, emir chiefs, everybody throng into one man for security. How can the IG know what is happening in Bogon, or happening in Iseluku, or know what's happening in Umapiti or Susun? How does he know what's even happening in Mafa? When we talk about security, we talk about accountability and responsibility. As further away as you go from the field, as further away as command goes from the field, the level of responsibility and accountability and attention to detail that should be there will be lacking, because people generally do what you inspect, not what you expect. So we are already in a crisis situation. The fears of saying that...
Let me send this to...
Please go ahead.
Let me send this to Mr. Shinaba, because you have already explained in great detail why security needs to be local. And I think that's what a number of people are pointing to, the fact that protection has to be there for the people. Just yesterday, 38 people, that's a lot of people, 38 people lost their lives in one attack. The week before, we were told, counting people who had died owing to the activities of non-state actors, 32 people. The week before that, 69 people. And these are human beings, Nigerians whom we're counting. And this is currently happening under the current structure which we have. Isn't it time to try something else?
Yeah, I think it's time we try something else. Security, in the first instance, is dynamic and should be seen as such. Take for a look the current insurgency we've been having, and we have tried so many ways, tactics, towards bringing it to an end. Despite all we have done, no result has been achieved as far as I'm concerned, because if you are fighting a battle and you have not gotten the result, then it's as good as not fighting it. And let us be guided that terrorism, insurgency, is not a conventional warfare that the military and the police were trained to combat. So it's somehow we should appreciate what they are doing. Even though we are looking at the results so far, the killings on daily basis, I mean, is nauseating. And I think the government needs to do more to end the insurgency, because there is the need for us to change our approach towards fighting it. And a lot of information gathering from the locals, from the people, will go a long way in supporting the fight against insurgency.
Well, terrorism, in the past used to be confined to the northeast. Right now, in order to different... Can you hear me, sir?
Very well.
Okay. I was saying that you spoke of dynamism in security operations. In what ways would you say that security operations have shown itself to be dynamic in terms of how it has evolved over the years?
Well, there had been different strategies that had been put in place in terms of combating insurgency. The use of the local hunters, the establishment of some of these things like Amotekun and the others in some various states, and the civilian joint civilian task force that are also there to assist the fighters at the front are very, very good initiative, but still we cannot say for sure that we are winning the war against insurgency. And that is why I say that
We'll come back in a moment, Mr. Shinaba. We'll come back in a moment and we'll interrogate some of these dynamic outfits which you have mentioned in just a moment. Please stay with us. We're still talking about insecurity in Nigeria and how to curb the spread, especially in the light of news that about 38 people were killed in overnight attacks in Kaduna State. We have with us this morning two gentlemen, Mr. Adenrele Shinaba, who is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police, and Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, who is a security consultant. The gentlemen are in our Lagos studios. And just before we went on break, I was asking Mr. Shinaba how he thinks that our security agencies have shown their dynamism. And he was giving us a response of how we've been able to introduce a few other security apparatus, Motekon in the southwest, MNJTF, that's that's not the civilian joint task team in Borno State and in some other places facing insurgency. But, you know, AIG, some people will say that this speaks to the need for security to be more local, for security to be drilled down. And it was in response to that need that we saw some of these, contraptions come up. For instance, Amotekun, we saw how it was greeted nationally and how the governors of the Southwest were defiant in terms of owning that particular force. In the northeast of the country, we see that it is as a result of necessity that the civilian joint task team has, come up. And there were even questions as to whether they should be allowed to carry arms. Eventually, I think they were allowed to do that. So if we're already developing these alternatives, or like say alternates to state police, why wouldn't we just go the full hog and give these people the powers to actually be able to command a team that can do work for protecting lives and property?
Yeah, I think what we should realize is that the emergence of these outfits as a result of the present situation in which we find ourselves. These are supposed to be ad hoc arrangements as it is required at this time of critical security situation. That is not to say that, in my own opinion, we require state police, because rather than having a state police, it would have been more appropriate for the country to carry out what I called community policing, which had its roots in Britain, and it has worked for them. And we discovered that it can work for us in this country, because the police cannot do it alone. Even the military cannot do it alone. They require information from members of the public. The military, for instance, do not live among the people, but they require information from the people. The police require such information to get to the root of any matter. Even in ordinary investigation, there is the need for information to be supplied to the police before they can actually make a breakthrough in anything. So I'm not advocating for state police. Rather, I'm against it. But I am of the view that community policing serves us better than, because that is not subject to abuse, serves us better than the state police.
Let me talks about community policing, and oftentimes there's always a confusion as to what precisely community policing is and this is from Mr. Adekoya, and what state policing is all about. If it's to achieve security of lives and property, why do you think we're shying away from state police?
Yeah, first of all, let's define what the current community policing proposal is, as proposed by the police force, which I think is a measure to save face and a political stunt that has no basis whatsoever to address the issues we have. You have a community constable. Already we have the supernumerary police, the spy police, which are almost doing the same thing as you would have the community police. In every community, you have a community constable who is not armed and has a different uniform. He's not a police officer, he's not paid. He's a volunteer person. He cannot do more than what any civilian can do. Every civilian can effect a civilian arrest. That's the most they can do. Every civilian can share information. But there's a trust deficit between the people and the police. So the community policing would not do anything. It doesn't change the narrative on the ground. It's just a sing-song, as it were. With due respect to the police force, just a sing-song to say, yes, we are doing something and we are creating a community police with nothing backing its structure. As a matter of fact, the governors of the state are supposed to pay the community police officers their allowance, and these same persons will not be armed. So what do we have here? We are just dancing around the issues again and again. I would say to the handlers of Nigerian security, we should stop being carpenters. Because if you're a carpenter, every problem looks like a nail, and all you have is a hammer. So when you say, what are the dynamic approaches we've used to addressing security? Nothing. An incident happens, we respond. We are always behind the curve. When you talk about security architecture and developing one, let me paint a bit of a picture of what we should be doing. We need to drill down, as we've overemphasized, create a local structure with bite. Create a state structure with bite. Create a supervising federal structure, but a federal structure that does not insult the subnationals. Because currently what we have now is that every subnational has yielded in trust its rights to self-defense and protection to the federal government, believing that the federal government will take all necessary measures to ensure their safety and security, which is enshrined in the Constitution. Now, this is not working. So we now have to come back. Why is it not working? We have stated the issues. You now look at policy framework in which your new approach will follow. Government is singing the right song. The 2019 National Security Strategy emphasized on human security being the approach to go into the 21st century. When you talk about human security, you talk about the ideals of a human society. Amenities, structure that ensure that people can live a peaceable life, pursue their aspiration without fear or let. If that is our aspiration, we now need to implement that aspiration. So in terms of economic policies, generally, I mean, I could give a lecture on this, but the failure of leadership is our problem. Because when you don't address macroeconomic issues and provide a framework for people to aspire and to unlock the potentials in the country, then we find ourselves all restricted in a small space. The extractive industry is even a case in point. We are just going practically nowhere in this country. And it's not the fault of justice administration. It's the fault of an old thinking. We need to unlock potentials within the subnational level. Create a policing structure that is owned by the people and for the people. The policemen serving today must not forget that they are first civilians drawn from the society, given the powers of the people to ensure security on their behalf. They are no special persons. The training they currently receive, they themselves will agree, is grossly inadequate. They are grossly under-resourced. Sorry, let me just land with this. Okay. And without the state government supporting the police as it is today, the Nigerian police will be on its knees. Because the capital budget of the police for the past 20, 30 years has not exceeded, capital budget has not exceeded 5 billion. 5 billion release, maybe 10, 15 billion on paper. And before the IG gets that money, he has to go cap in hand. So the IG doesn't even have the resources to equip the police. The last IG before this made requests for equipment, got less to nothing. So there are issues that we must genuinely address and stop the sing-song, and everyone roll up the sleeves. Leadership is required.
Okay. Well, Mr. Shinaba, concerning this issue of funding the police, you referenced it the other time as well, that some of the states that we have already do the job of equipping, financing, mobilizing officers of the police to some extent. So one then wonders, how much worse could it be then if the governors of governments, as he has said, who already funds the police, also have some executive powers to marshal their forces with restrictions, perhaps.
It's very good you added that phrase, with restrictions. You see, the problem of the police, as we talk, we've all been talking about funding, and it is true. The police are underfunded, and it's a problem of leadership. You can't blame any policeman or the police hierarchy for that, because the money comes from the state, and if it does not come, how do they perform? We say the British police are doing very well, the foreign police are doing, the American police are doing this, that, and that. Look at the Nigeria police. Each time they go out on a foreign mission, on a foreign assignment, they always excel. Why? Why is it that they can perform outside the shores of this country and cannot perform within? It speaks volumes. It shows that they are not given the conducive environment to operate. If a policeman performs during a peacekeeping operation in any of these countries where they have performed, they started since 1960 in Congo, they have gone to so many places, Namibia and all other places. They are given the right things that are needed by the United Nations that organizes the assignment. The vehicle, the communication gadgets, the allowances, and everything is taken care of. But when we get back home here, you can see some of the rickety vehicles that the police have to contend with in the operation. And I can assure you, it's the police vehicle that should not even work for a year. Maybe for a period of 6 months. There are different drivers. The one on morning duty comes, picks the vehicle, go out on patrol. By the time he closes, the one on night duty, a different person handles the same vehicle. And this vehicle is running 24 hours of the day, more than even a commercial vehicle. So it needs constant changing of vehicles and equipment. The man you are seeing is not motivated to do his job. He's not. And let me tell you, one of the most hazardous jobs in this world is policing.
Well, some may agree with you there. I mean, are you then saying that the 20% increase, salary increase that is set to be taken off in January is sufficient?
That's very funny. How many times have the government said they are increasing the police salary? How many times have they said it? Has it been implemented?
They said it will start in January.
That's another election promise. As far as I am concerned, I'm seeing it as that. We pray they do it. January is around the corner. Let us pray they do it, because everything in this country must be attributed to prayers.
Well, Mr. Adekoya said the other time that one of the topics about this security, he could give a lecture on it. I really wish we had time for that lecture, because I said that to say there is a lot to unpack as far as security or a lack of it is concerned, and those who need to do one thing or the other about it really need to get working, because losing lives on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and recurring losses of both security officials and ordinary Nigerians is most certainly heartrending, and I don't think any government official even wants that. For now, we have to thank you very much for being a part of our conversation. Adenrile Shinaba is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
As well as Onyeka Chi Adekoya, who is a security consultant. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
We continue after now to look at another issue of importance, especially in the coming year. Stay with us.
The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is one of the most polarizing pieces of legislation in the Ninth Assembly. Clause 52, which refers to electronic transmission of results, split lawmakers in the Senate sharply along party lines to the extent that a division was called on the vote for the first time in the Ninth Assembly.
Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
After the public vote on Clause 52, the Senate approved that INEC may consider electronic transmission of results, provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communications Commission, NCC, and approved by the National Assembly. This amendment caused uncertainty in the public space as to the intention of Parliament in promoting credible elections and the fate of electronic transmission of results in future elections.
In my name.
Fast forward to Tuesday's plenary session. The Senate is reversing its decision and is giving electoral umpire INEC the free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Voting at an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission.
Those in favor of Clause 52 as amended, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 43, 63 and 87. Clause 87 refers to the procedure for party primaries, which the previous amendment prescribes direct and indirect primaries. The latest amendment is prescribing direct primaries for political parties.
I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary elections.
If this our democracy will be strengthened, if this our democracy will grow, and if we are going to be able to take it to anything close to global best practice standards, it is time for us to adopt direct mode of primaries.
Those in favor of the amendment to Clause 87, 4, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
Briefing journalists after plenary, the Senate spokesperson throws more light on the re-amendment of the Electoral Act bill.
This would allow INEC, when they have the necessary wherewithal and competence, they don't need to come back for us to introduce electronic voting machine as part of the materials they will use for election.
The Senate's latest amendment of Section 52 to empower INEC to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections is sure to delight many Nigerians and those in the civic space who have been agitating for a reversal of the earlier decision. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Well, if you've been following this program from the very beginning, perhaps you would have seen it in the papers, on the front pages, most of them reporting on the fate of the Electoral Act so far, wondering what is happening. Some say political parties oppose NAS overriding PMB. You have a few of them here talking about the Electoral Act. And that's exactly what we're sinking our teeth into right now, as we wonder whether or not the president has penned his signature to the Electoral Act. Well, yesterday, our colleague on the sister program, Politics Today, spoke with the president's spokesperson, Garba Shehu, and he said that we shouldn't preempt the president. However, we're counting the days which the president had to append his signature, 30 days from when it was transmitted to the executive arm of government. It would seem that that elapsed yesterday, and it's unclear as to what precisely has happened. But from indications for such a landmark amendment, we imagine that there would have been some fanfare, assuming the president had penned his signature to it. We haven't seen that. We could be wrong. We could be right. We don't know. But perhaps today might give a clearer picture as to the fate. But in the meantime, we have with us two very gentlemen in the studio to give us their insights into what could happen I mean, if the president has, if he hasn't, what their thoughts are as we wait to know what will happen with the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. In the studio with us, we have Mr. Austin Aigbe, who is a Senior Program Officer at the Center for Democracy and Development. He's also a member steering committee in Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you so much.
And we also have with us Mr. Wale Balogun, who is a legal practitioner. Well, gentlemen, it's a delight to have you here this morning. I do not know what your stance is on this Electoral Act, but our colleague there, Linda Kigbe, was able to give us a background as to where we're coming from, particularly in the Senate, which she covers, in terms of how the bill traveled through to what it eventually became when it was eventually sent to the president. We saw the struggles, and it would seem that for the very first time, we saw the Senate reverse itself. You know, it points to the importance of this bill. And I think that the expectations as we enter 2022, because there will be 2 other elections before the country goes into a general election. So that bill is being awaited at least to serve as a test run for these elections. But so far, so good. What are your thoughts? The 30 days have now elapsed. We're not certain if the president has appended or not appended his signature to this bill. What are your thoughts as we await to know what the final outcome is?
Yes, the 30 days, by counting the number of days,
yes,
would expire like yesterday. But by the interpretation clause, when the last day fall on a Sunday, the next day, which is the working day, will be the last day. So today should actually be the last day. So we expect that President Buhari will transmit today and will sign today.
You're optimistic?
Yes. Anywhere the president is. Right now, the president is in Turkey. Anywhere the
he's
president...
back from what we understand.
Okay. Even if he's there, let me assume he's still there, because from what we understand, I haven't read that he's back. Even if the president is in the UK, he is a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, anywhere he is, you have the seal of government. You have the authority. As a president, he can sign from anywhere around the world. Don't forget, we have had history of transmission of letters from the UK to the Senate. So it's not the first time the president will be signing anything outside of this country. We've had, at the time, some budget was sent from outside the country. So anywhere the president is seated, that is the office. And don't forget, we have mission houses across the federation, across the world, sorry. Anywhere you have the mission house, that is Nigeria domiciled in that country. It's just like the United States Embassy. That's the United States. The same way we have embassies in Turkey. Anywhere the president is seated. I am so much optimistic. You know why I'm optimistic? Why? Because the challenge with the bill, based on what political parties and, of course, governors have brought to the fore, is with direct primaries. And you know, President Buhari historically has always supported direct primaries. In fact, it was his primary election, he insisted that the presidential primary election should be direct primaries, while all of the others were indirect. So President Buhari favored direct primaries so well, and I'm too positive that he will sign and transmit appropriately.
Well, some people have said, speaking with governor yesterday, the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, was said to have said, no, that is not exactly the bone of contention. The bone of contention is electronic transmission, and that the direct or indirect primaries is the way the ruling party is trying to pull the wool over the eyes of Nigerians. But I'll let you we'll play his track too as well. We'll let you speak to that and have your opening comments when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
I did say, and it's very clear, that the president was not going to sign the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. So I continue to say it, and I stand firm, because I know Mr. President, and I know the government, I know the party in power. So many people are talking about direct primaries. That is not the problem. That's not a problem, because the major issue is the transmission, electronic transmission of results. Now, what the ruling party in their conspiracy is trying to deceive Nigerians that the mere inclusion of the direct primaries in the Electoral Act amendment is the problem why the president does not want to sign, or why he has refused to sign. So the issue is this. Mr. President signed the petroleum industry bill and then sent back for an amendment of that bill. Now, if the President means well for this country, and if the President, as he had promised Nigerians, that he wants to conduct a free and fair election, nothing stops Mr. President by assenting to this amendment and then seek for an amendment as regards to the direct or indirect mode of conducting the primaries of the various political parties.
One or two things obviously is about to happen, or already has happened. Either the president has signed or has declined signature. For us, in the executive arm of the government, there is a protocol governing communication with the National Assembly. Even when we know, even when we have seen it, we don't make a disclosure. The National Assembly would feel rather unkindly treated if we go on the pages of newspaper and say, this is where or what is the president is saying. So please allow time. I believe that they should be in Tuesday. We're hoping they'll be there in big numbers. They possibly would have something to tell Nigerians. I don't know. I haven't seen anything and haven't been briefed. I think that you are making the assumption that as we speak, there is no decision. And I'm not in a position to tell you yes or no. But given the way things are done, the president would have completed his consultations some time back. The president would be communicating with the National Assembly whatever he decides, either yes or no.
Yes, Mr. Austin Aigbe and Mr. Wale Balogun, who's a legal practitioner, are still with us here in our Abuja studios. And we're talking about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill as transmitted to the President by the National Assembly. We'll wait to note the fate of that bill. But let me come to you, Mr. Balogun. What do you make of, the controversy that is trailing the President's signature, or will I say lack of it, to this particular Electoral Act Amendment Bill? What are your thoughts on it? Is it much ado about nothing, a storm in a teacup, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my view is it's certainly not a storm in the tea. This is because this amendment is so significant in the life of Nigerian democracy. We are supposedly supposed to be practicing what is called constitutional democracy or representative democracy. So if you look at the issue of direct primary or indirect primary, it's right at the heart of it. Who represents who? The participation of the people in electoral process, of who represents the sharing of the power. This is what democracy is all about. I've heard about the Governor Wike's view before, but I also in alignment with him with respect to the fact that it's not the amendment is not all about it's not all about direct or indirect primary. It's equally very significant, the issue of electronic transmission. We must not lose sight of that. So I feel that our president had 30 days. I'm wondering why they stayed this long. And as of yesterday, which were my colleague's interpretation, hopefully before the end of today, we should be able to know whether the president is going to agree to it or not. Where we can't speculate now, people have tried to look at the antecedent of our president. He's leaning. Governor Wike is one view. My colleague here is another view. is very, very optimistic that the president is going to do it. Governor Wike is not so optimistic. Well, I'm in between. I'll wait for the end of today to come and see what happens. But you can look at how the historical background of, as your colleague narrated, the National Assembly for the first time on such a significant issue reversed itself on this very issue. So if you look at it along that line, it will appear, well, the impression is the fact that the National Assembly would not have done that without consultation with the president, because they took a position contrary to allowing direct primary. So for them to suddenly just say, okay, we are now for direct primary, the impression is the fact that being the ruling party and the president is the leader of the ruling party, they will possibly have consulted with him and he must have been in agreement with them. This is our presumption. So hopefully before the end of today, the president should be able to tell Nigerians, yeah, the transmission can be either of the two ways. It's that he goes back to the National Assembly, the procedure are well spelled out in the Constitution, Section 58, sub 3. What he needs to do is send it back to the National Assembly to say, oh, I've agreed or I've not agreed. Just like possibly we all know too, that's not the end of it. The National Assembly too, we also have another bite to also say, oh, we agree with Mr. President or we do not agree with Mr. President. So we are all waiting, but it's a very, very significant enactment.
What a journey the Electoral Act has been, I mean, the Electoral Act amendment has been through. We saw the battle. In fact, it got to fisticuffs in the House of Representatives before they eventually were able to pass something. And we saw, for the as you rightly, concurred, the Senate reverse itself, from pressure and a number of other considerations, even in-house pressure within amongst the senators themselves. And then we thought, okay, that was over, and there was going to be a done deal as soon as it got to the presidency. But then we saw that the president also needed advice. There was that letter which he wrote to INEC asking their advice. It would seem that he wasn't just going to rely on the advice of his Attorney General. And we also saw open pressure from governors. There was no shame in terms of how, the governors were lobbying, and even lawmakers too. The leadership of the National Assembly had to pay at least 2 visits to the president over this particular amendment bill. Very significant. Why do you think it is particularly contentious?
Well, I listened to Governor Wike. I will, if you understand some kind of political narrative and this divide and rule tactics, for me that could be some kind of theoretical underpinning. Let's not make it direct primary challenge. Let's call it this one. Yes, before the Senate backed down, the pressure was on electronic transmission of result, electronic voting and transmission. There were 2 documents. The House of Rep did agree to those transmission, but the Senate said no, that if you must transmit, we must rely on a NCC, and then you must come back to us for approval. Based on pressure, like you said, the Senate realizing that the entire country needed this electronic transmission result. In fact, there were many state men, many state women, civil society organizations.
Was it just pressure alone? Because there was also the part that was unconstitutional, that INEC as an independent body could not be subject to either the NCC or the Senate.
That's why I said it was pressure, because we did a lot of campaign. We used that as a campaign, that you can't subject INEC under NCC. NCC is a product of National Assembly. INEC is a product of the Constitution. So you can't subject INEC under. So those are our advocacy too. So where I'm heading to is that direct primaries are literally be accepted. Even the senators who came out boldly and said no to transmission of result because in their location there were no internet or there were no coverage. Every evidence points to the fact that these were all aimed to disinform people. And why do I say to disinform people? They accepted to hear the views of NCC, but declined to hear the views of INEC at the time of negotiation. INEC got every data at their disposal. They've worked with NCC to do high-level mapping, and it was clear that the entire country had minimal 2G coverage that can transmit data, maybe not pictures, I mean, we know what data can easily be sent, unlike when you are touching pictures. So that was valid, and they needed, evidence don't lie, so when you prove it, you put it on the table, people are going to see it. On that basis, a lot of pressure, like we agreed. The Senate, in my opinion, I haven't seen that pressure is there. We needed to back down. However, let me quickly also add that there was a conference committee. The conference committee actually did the harmonization. The Senate had the direct primaries in their proposal, but the House of Reps had direct and indirect primaries. But the conference committee, due to harmonization, accepted the House of Reps position on the clause that was contentious at that time, which is the electronic transmission of result. And then the conference committee also accepted the Senate proposal of direct primaries. Why I feel, or we feel at the civil society level, that the direct primaries is actually the major, is if you check the people opposing or lobbying Mr. President not to sign, every one of them enjoys the advantage of direct primaries. And for a lot of actors...
Indirect.
They're opposing direct primary. They're opposing direct primaries only as the means of selecting candidates. We know in this country that political parties, particularly the selection process, is the weakest link to strengthening our democracy. Political party selection process is so weird that if you do not belong to that circle, and even the member of National Assembly, they may fall prey to those circles. And apparently, the only way to put it is let everybody in the party vote. And I've also had a lot of argument that direct primaries wouldn't solve it, citing examples from Lagos and elsewhere. See, when you say direct primaries, everybody focuses on that direct primaries. What we have seen before in this country, people running direct primaries in Lagos and elsewhere, these are not direct primary elections. Direct primaries are conducted at the ward level where the party membership are instituted. Every party had their membership at the ward level. Every member coming up at that location to vote, they know each other. That's the essence of bottom-up democracy, and that's what direct primaries aim to achieve. Indirect primaries, electronic transmission of results, in my opinion, that has been laid to rest. I strongly hold that has been laid to rest because of the advantages it brings to the table. One of it is the economic benefit to run electronic transmission of results, which most actors have come to realize that it is true. I'll give you a metaphor. In 2019 election, there were 82...
Why do you think this will not solve the litigations?
We just talked about the time now. Now, for instance, the APC primary is coming up February, tentatively, as you've said. Now, so from February to February, where the national election will be, that will be 12 months. So now, let's say the primary will start after the convention, presumably, right? So the convention, the primaries will take average of about 90 days. So you're looking at March, April, May. Now, because they are pre-election issues, so they will take average of 180 days by the amendment to the Constitution Section 285 now. That's average of 180 days at the tribunal, at the high court level, whether federal high court or state high court. After that, another 180 days. 60 days at the Court of Appeal, 60 days at the Supreme Court. Now, you are almost in February 2023. So now you are not talking of whatever the level of litigation you are seeing with indirect primary. We know how contentious all these things are. So you can see between that February, or at least they will finish the convention in February. So from that March, you can just imagine the quantum of litigation.
Well, some people say that's work for lawyers. I mean, I don't think you
of course, lawyers are not complaining.
It will actually, maybe we can have this conversation again because it will, the process that leads to litigation is when people get angry, the selection process. And we are saying when you improve this selection process, it will downturn. If I know that I lose election gallantly, I will congratulate my neighbor. But when you come in a small room and you say that I cannot contest, or what happened to women? You buy form and you are not at the point of selection. He said, no, you are for governor, you will go for House of Reps. We have settled. Agreed? And we go out. And then you do some kind of kangaroo indirect primaries that people see. And you think, I won't go to court?
Have you considered the violence?
Well, let us, there are all manner of issues, but we'll wait to see what eventually will happen today, gentlemen. We have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. We've been speaking with two gentlemen here in our studio. Mr. Austin Aigbe is of the CDD, that's the Center for Democracy and Development, and Mr. Wale Balogun is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. Well, let's quickly take a look at some of your mails, and we're starting with that of Louis Afolabi. Talking about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, says, I pray the President will not miss the opportunity to etch his name in the annals of history through the signing of the bill in question. I also pray the National Assembly will not miss the opportunity to prove the naysayers wrong, that they are not a rubber stamp NAS, by vetoing the President where he fails to sign the bill. Oh, well. That says Louis Afolabi already doing a 50-50. Just in case this doesn't happen, maybe this might happen. Let's see what eventually transpires.
Are those prayers calling for an amen? I don't know. Paul Abolade on agitation for state police says, in my opinion, I prefer local recruitment and redeployment of additional number of police officers to establishing or enacting state police. I strongly believe that we're all witnesses to how the state governors are manipulating the so-called state INEC today during the local government elections. If state policing is allowed, it will only be a matter of time before the crime rates in states will escalate, because a new political party coming into power will always fault the incumbent's recruitment process.
Isioma Chigbolu has this one. Can we stop lying to ourselves in Nigeria? Insecurity is everywhere. Scores are killed daily. The nation is under siege from terrorists and bandits. What we have now is definitely not working. Yet some people don't want state police or local police. It is impossible for a nation of over 200 million people to be policed from faraway Abuja. Wake up, Nigeria. Decentralize the police like everything else and secure the nation in all the local governments down to the villages. What we have now is not working. On the fears of misuse, we can set up a civilian independent board made up of legal luminaries to check on the police. We must change what we have now. It is not working. Well, this mail reads almost like a poem, a lot of repetitive lines just to reinforce the message. Well, that's from Isioma Chigbolu.
Well, Famous is on the same issue, saying our police need total restructuring. The 20% increase in police salaries is little to nothing compared to what our police need. Conducive atmosphere should be given. We need to do away with this pre-colonial structure of the police.
And Professor Chris Enakena says, to fix our insecurities, let's fix the economy. Our political elites must have a national economic plan where there are policies and programs to alleviate poverty, reduce corruption, and they must enact humane policies to unlock the national economic potentials of our youths.
But on the same, finally, say we are fighting an unusual war. We're fighting an enemy within. We're fighting a faceless enemy. We are fighting guerrilla warfare. And in this kind of fight, the security forces can't do it all alone. It requires every single Nigerian to support them. Okay, that's it.
Well, we have to thank you for your mails this beautiful Monday morning, starting on the week of Christmas. Yes, it's just a few days now to the festive season. We hope that we spend it in some safety and security, and we wish you a very productive week. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a good day.